Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 101, Fran's Gotta Have It. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. On his way off to London to try to convince Celine Dion to make her Broadway debut, Maxwell gives Fran a number of mixed signals, and she decides that she's going to put their cat and mouse game to rest for once and for all. While Fran meant that she was going to end things with Maxwell, Val thought she meant that she was going to follow him to London and rekindle the passion that they had in Paris. Fran takes Val's suggestion and surprises Maxwell at his hotel. After Celine Dion brushes Maxwell off with her unwillingness to make a commitment, Fran and Maxwell return to the hotel and appear on the precipice of physical intimacy. Only Maxwell pulls back. And Fran tells him that if it isn't going to happen now, it ain't going to happen, because she recognizes that her chances will only decrease as she slowly turns into Yetta. As Fran begins packing her bag to leave, a phone call comes in. Niles just had a heart attack. Fran stays on at the Sheffield home to make sure the kids are fed while readily assigning household tasks to them. Fran and Maxwell meet at Niles' hospital bedside where Cece finds them in a loving embrace. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
No, I do not.
All right, would you like to take us to scene one in the kitchen?
Yes, so we open up in the Sheffield kitchen. Val and Fran are there with a little kitty. Um, and Val's saying, "Oh, isn't he adorable? My next door neighbor's cat had kittens." And Fran's like, "Oh, you mean that old bald cat with no tail? Oh, perfect. Even she has kids before me." And Val's like, "Oh, it's spring. Everyone gets a little hot and bothered." And then she goes on to say, she was watching the Discovery Channel, and the Discovery Channel says it affects all living orgasms.
Correct.
And Fran's like, "Orgasms, Val? What were you watching? Norm Crosby's Wild Kingdom?" Um, at this point, Niles skates in from the side door. Yes, skates in on rollerblades.
Yep.
Um, and Fran's like, excuse, well, he goes straight for the cake. And Fran's like, "Excuse me, you just finished exercising. Why are you eating cake, Sylvia?"
Mm-hmm.
And Niles is like, "Carrot cake, it's a vegetable."
Right.
And Fran's like, "Oh, excuse me." And Niles explains, "I need a reward. I just skated my butt off." And Val kind of looks at Niles's behind and says, "Not really."
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Niles continues, explains that he's going for a whole new youthful look. And he's been killing himself all week trying to drop a pound. And then he kind of turns to Fran, like, "How does Mr. Sheffield keep in shape?" And Fran, without missing a beat, says, "From running from commitment."
Yep.
Ooh, burn. At that point, Maxwell walks into the kitchen, and Franca's like, "Oh, here's Carl Lewis now." And Maxwell's like, "Well, I'm off to London, Miss Fine, to catch Celine Dion in concert." And he goes on to explain, "Yeah, I'm going to try and talk her into doing Broadway, leaving at 6 o'clock." He starts sniffing Fran,
Mm-hmm.
um, and he goes, and it's like her neck area, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "What is that intoxicating scent you have on?" Oh, and she's like, "Oh, what?" And she starts like feeling around. And just for context, she's wearing one of her bathrobes.
A
And then,
purple one, if I recall correctly.
yeah, yeah. And then she pulls out kind of from the collar area or behind. Oh, it's a snuggle. So dry, you know. Eh, so anyway, Maxwell continues. "You look very fetching in that robe." And Fran kind of lowers one of the shoulders, right? Exposes one of her shoulders.
Yes.
And she's like, "What do you mean?" And then Niles skates back in, explaining he's, packed the luggage. "Here's your passport, your your ticket, pictures of the children, and one of Miss Fine." And Fran's like, "You're taking a picture of me?" And Maxwell explains, "Well, you are family, Miss Fine. I have some of Niles too." And Fran's like, "Meanwhile, he ain't wearing a bikini." And Niles
Mm-hmm.
kind of looks over and points, "I am in this one."
Yeah, weird response, not gonna lie.
Yeah. So anyway, Maxwell says, "Anyway, I'll be gone for 3 whole days. I'm going to miss you." And he, like,
Mhm.
is hugging Fran, and Fran over his shoulder, um, is kind of making almost like a drinking motion or something
Correct.
to, like, Val and Niles? Like, that's how you interpreted it too, right?
Yeah, which I thought was weird because there was no indication he was drinking, it's just
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it there was no it wasn't like he was acting intoxicated or anything like that. Um, so yeah, it was interesting, and so Fran, wishes him to have a safe trip. Um, and off Maxwell goes, and Fran turns to Val. Can you believe that guy? He sniffs my snuggles, and then he's out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sniffs my snuggles. Um, so anyway, she's like, "That's it. I'm going to put an end to this whole cat and mouse thing once and for all." And Val's like, "Oh, how romantic." What? "Oh, you're going to follow him to London, then rekindle the passion you guys had in Paris." Ah. And Fran's like, "Well, I was going to quit, but your way's good too.
Mhm.
So now we have a whole new plan." Is there anything you'd like to add to this opening scene?
No.
Okay, can you take us to London?
Sure. So we're now in London and Maxwell's in his hotel room and he like flops himself on the bed and like the bellboy or whoever leaves, he opens the shade, not the shade, the curtains, and Fran is already on the balcony waiting for him. And so she like is holding two glasses of champagne and struggles to get in the door. She eventually does. She puts them down. She leans over the bed near Maxwell and she takes out something, a snuggle, and sticks it under his nose and asks, "Who does this remind you of?" And he sort of like sleepily, dreamily says, "It reminds me of Miss Fine." And then like he snaps and realizes, "Miss Fine, what the devil are you doing here?" And he like gets up and gets away from her. And she's like, "Well, I guess I'm blowing 40,000 frequent flyer miles." And he's like, "Forgive me, I'm a little confused." And Fran like follows him and she's like, "Well, I thought when a couple's been together as long as we have, it would be nice to get away from the kids and work so that we can rekindle our romance." "What romance?" And she's like, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, playing hard to get doesn't work with me. Why don't you just go for it? See if I back off." And I think I misspoke. This is when he gets away from her. And he's like, "Miss Fine, look, I'm suffering from jet lag and I don't want to say anything wrong because God knows you'll never let me forget it." And she's like, "Well, what could you possibly say that's wrong?" And he's like, "Well, let's just get you your own room, shall we?" And she's like, "My own room." 2 seconds. There's a new world record. And he's like,
Mhm.
"Miss Fine, I'm here on business. I can't just drop everything." And she gives him this look like she wants him to drop everything. She wants to spend time with him. And then, did you do you want to cover the montage or should I?
You should.
Okay. So she looks at him, basically say with a look that says, "Please drop everything, spend time with me, love me." And that's what he does. So we get this montage of them doing things in London. They're walking by a river and she's feeding pigeons. They're walking down a street and she pulls him into a cafe and then they come out each carrying food and they're going to sit and they're going to eat. Um, they he gives her a flower. They're walking on a bridge. Like we see them just doing these like they're holding hands or they're walking, arm in arm. They're being very lovey dovey and it's very cute. Um,
Mhm.
do you want to add anything?
Don't they kiss at some point, snuggled on a bench, or
I
am I
think I think
misremembering?
you're right. Sorry, I think they do that. They do kiss there. Um, yes,
Like a kind of more of a
it's not a
peck.
yeah, it's not a passionate like "I need you now" type kiss,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
more of a respectful, loving, just like pure like love.
Mhm. Yeah, like she's kind of has her head on his shoulder, looks up, and he kind of, purses his lips and quick little kiss on the lips, but still.
Hmm.
So yeah. Um While they're having fun going around London, we return back to the Sheffield living room. And Brighton's asking, "Explain to me why I need a babysitter. I'm old enough to fly a chopper in the Israeli army." And Maggie's like, "Look, Fran loves us. She wants to make sure we're in good hands." And this, of course, like Yetta's there. And Yetta says, "This chair is going is gone."
Is going. I can feel all the springs.
Yep. And then of course Gracie pops her head out from behind Yetta and it's like, "That's because you're sitting on me."
Mhm.
Niles walks in from the back of the room. I do need to note that Cece's also already present in the living room. But Niles walks in, and there's something a bit different about him. Uh,
Mhm.
he has dark hair that's kind of swept back,
Mhm.
almost a bit Mr. Sheffield-esque, right?
Yes.
There's no white, gray streak. Um, but still, he comes in and immediately upon seeing him, Cece's kind of smirking. And um and Niles is like, "What?" And Cece's like, "Oh, it was smart doing it gradually so nobody would notice." And Niles says, "Same way you became a woman," which not a
Yeah.
fan of that line.
Not ideal, no.
Yeah. But then Niles turns to Yetta and asks, "What do you think, Yetta?" And Yetta's like, "I can't comment on the hair until you take off the beret." Which,
Mhm.
of course, Cece's loving, right?
Of course.
And she's like, "Who is it you look like?" Wait, I know. And then I can't do this impression very well. Um,
I'm not
but
sure I can either, but go ahead.
it said that it was the line is, "Hey ladies," or something like that, but she like pulls her hair back and like I don't know.
Puts her
It
head on
said
her
that she was,
forehead and yeah.
yeah, and it says that she was imitating Jerry Lewis. So imagine Jerry Lewis saying, "Hey, ladies," or someone imitating Jerry Lewis saying, "Hey, ladies." So Niles then goes on to say, "Can we be serious for a moment? Mr. Sheffield telephoned. He hasn't seen Celine Dion yet." And Cece's like, "Well, what's he's doing in London?" And Niles is
Mhm.
like, "One would hope, Miss Fine."
Mhm.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to add to that scene?
No. Um,
Cool.
no.
Take us back to London then.
All right. So Maxwell and Fran are observing Celine Dion practicing her performance, and they're talking about how incredible she is, how she'd be a sensation on Broadway. And Fran looks over at the rack of clothes of Celine Dion, and she's like, "Would you look at these gorgeous clothes? Oh, how I wish I had a job where I could change into designer outfits every 5 minutes." And then, Celine Dion comes down from the stage and she's like, "Well, where's the sound man? When I sang, there's that weird feedback, like wah, wah, wah." And Fran's like, "What? You sounded gorgeous." And Celine Dion's like, "Okay, never mind. I found the source of the problem." And
Mhm.
so Maxwell and Fran are complimenting her about how wonderful she is, how great she is. And Maxwell asks her if she's given any more thought to the kind of Broadway show she'd like to do. And her response is, "Well, actually, yes. I would love to do a show with my musical family. Do you know that my mom wrote the first song that I've ever recorded?" And then she sings it in French, and I'm not going to try to mimic it.
Mhm.
And they're like, "Yes, that's beautiful." And Fran's like, "Oh, my mother wrote the first song that I ever sang too." I'm also not going to try to mimic it because I have no idea what she's saying.
Mhm.
Um, and Celine Dion's like, "Charming. I'm sorry for rushing, but I have to go. This is the only time while I'm in London to really indulge my passion for shopping." And Fran's like, "You've got a passion for shopping? I swear, if you weren't Canadian, internationally successful, and can carry a tune, I think that we were separated at birth." And Max was like, "But Celine, what about our project?" And her response is, "I'll let you know. I'm just not ready to make a commitment." And she walks off. And Fran snidely says to Maxwell, "How's it feel, baby?"
Mhm.
And he's like, "Okay, so well, what do you want to do now?" And she's like, "Well, I'll tell you. After the day we've had today, all I want to do is take my clothes off and get into bed." And he says to her, "Tired?" And she's like, "No." And she takes his arm and they walk off.
Yeah, and she has this look on her face, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Do you want to take us
Yeah.
to their to the hotel room?
Yes. So, we see them opening the door while kissing, and as soon as they're inside, Maxwell picks up Fran and carries her to the bed, laying her down. Kissing, she's reaching up. Oh, Mr. Sheffield, Mr. Sheffield. And then it's like you can see that he has changed his mind. He's literally backed off. But Fran's eyes are still closed for a second and she's reaching for him. And so she goes, "Where'd he go?"
Yeah,
And
but the way she says it, it's just like, where'd he go? Like what? Like I'm not even
yeah.
doing a good impression, but like, because she was like in the moment,
Oh, yeah.
she's like
Yeah.
moaning his name, and then she realizes he's not there. Wait, where'd he go? Like,
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
sorry, go
And
ahead.
yeah, yeah. And he's kind of in the sitting area because, like, pretty much this hotel is very much set up similar to their Paris hotel. In
Yes.
terms of the location of like the bed, and then there's like a little sitting area. So he's put distance between himself and Fran, and he's just like, "Miss Fine, I can't. I just can't." And Fran's like, "Mr. Sheffield, is there something you haven't told me? Something that might have happened in the Falklands?" And he's like, "No, of course not. Um, I'm talking about what we're about to do. It seems wrong." And Fran's like, "Well, now I don't know if I'm coming or going. You keep giving me mixed messages. You act like you want me." And Max was like, "Well, of course I want you. You're a very sexy, beautiful woman." And Fran's like, now would be a good time to end this argument."
Correct.
And Maxwell goes on, "Miss Fine, don't you see? Don't you see what we were about to do here was a very serious step to take? Oh, you're not just a one night stand." And she's like, "Me? Oh, yeah, of course not. Look, Mr. Sheffield, I always thought that we were going to end up together, but if it ain't gonna happen now, it ain't gonna happen." Max was like, "I didn't say it'll never happen," because at this point she's kind of gathering up her, like, and he's going a little after her, and she's like, "Well, I think what my chances are only going to decrease as I slowly morph into Yetta.
Hmm.
4 years, it's enough already. I can't take it anymore. It's too difficult. I'm out of here. I got to go." And, she's gathering up her stuff as she's saying this, and Maxwell's trying to prevent her. "Miss Fine,
He
you
grabs
know,
her to like
yeah,
stop her. Go ahead.
yeah." But he says, I'm not giving into my urges. The stakes are far too high. I'm a bloody gentleman after all. So in the middle of this like intensity, the phone rings, and so
Hmm.
Maxwell answers it rather curtly. "Yes, what is it?" And um, and she's like, "Oh, Miss Fine, don't go." And Frank's like, "I'm sorry, I can't take it anymore. It's over." And that's when Niles or Maxwell says while he's still on the phone, "Niles just had a heart attack," and Fran gasps.
And
Is
everything changes.
Yes.
Like,
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
no, you did an excellent job with that scene.
Oh, thank you. Will you take us then to the hospital?
So we go to the hospital, and Maxwell and Fran are rushing down the hallway, and Fran is talking about how she can't believe that Niles had a heart attack. Why did I ever leave home? Why did I ever go to London? And he's like, "Miss Fine, you can't blame yourself." And she's like, "Was I talking to you?" Meanwhile, they were the only ones in the hallway together. Cece comes out
Mhm.
from a door, and Maxwell says, "Cece, thank God. Where is he? Is he all right?" And Cece's like, "Oh, he's in there. I don't know. Maxwell, everything was perfectly normal. I said to Niles that I wish I'd gone to London to England with you. And he said, "Oh, sure, you could have visited your old neighborhood, Stonehenge." And I said, "You mean that place where the rocks are older than yours?" Which I thought was so clever. And then the scariest thing happened. He had the heart attack? No, no, not yet. There I was, waiting for his zinger, and nothing. I even set him up again. I said, "Don't make me get ugly." But his eyes just rolled up into his head and he collapsed on the floor. Meanwhile, at that moment, the door opens and a gurney with a body covered in a sheet comes out. Cece takes one look at it and says, "Oh no, I killed him. It's all my fault." She climbs on the gurney with the person. "Don't
On
leave
top of
me." On, yes, on top of the person. And this other woman comes out who's clearly with the dead body, and she's like, "Hector, who is she?" And starts like
Mhm.
trying to hit Cece with her purse. And they like go
Yeah.
out down the hallway and like turn a
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah, with Cece still on the gurney.
Uh-huh. And Cece doesn't
It's
like get up.
far from the view. Yeah.
It's very peculiar. But so then, a medical looking person comes out, and Maxwell introduces himself as Niles' employer and asks, "How is he?" And so the doctor says that he suffered a mild heart attack, but I'm very optimistic. Come on in, you can see him. And they go into the room. Did you count this all as one scene or did you cut
Yeah.
it?
I
Okay,
counted it as one.
okay, cool. So they like go into the room and Niles is lying on the bed. His eyes are closed, his hair is still dark. And Fran says, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, look, he looks so helpless." And Maxwell says to the doctor, "Listen, this man has stood by me for my whole life. You have to help him. Whatever it takes, money is no object." And Fran's like, "Oh God, look at him. How can he not have dyed his eyebrows too?" And the doctor's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, come on, guys. He's going to be fine. He just needs to cut down on the goose liver pate, the brie, and the chocolate mousse." And Fran's like, "So this Godiva," and she's holding a box, "would be poison for him?" And the doctor nods. "Oh, but it'll help us through this stressful time." And so Maxwell asks, "Is Niles comfortable?" And the doctor explains that he's on 10 milligrams of morphine. And Fran's like, "Oh, he's Cheech and Chong comfortable." And
Mhm.
yeah. Do you have anything you want to add?
I do not.
All right. Would you like to take us back to the house?
Yes, so we're in the kitchen. I think believe Fran's already in there. Maxwell walks in. Oh, Miss Fine, Mr. Sheffield. Maxwell says, Miss Fine, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you standing by me at this difficult time. And Fran, who has kind of like a cold demeanor towards him, is like, well, let's just get something straight. I'm not staying here for you. Staying here for the children. I want to make sure that they have a home cooked meal. And
Hmm.
then at this point, like, I don't know what Maxwell was thinking, but he makes some type of comment about, oh, next time, like, if we're
When
looking
you
for an
cook,
action
when you
figure.
cook tonight's meal, please do remember the action figure.
Yeah. We're missing a Yoda
Hmm.
or something like that. And she's like, well, excuse me for ordering in. I've just had so many things to do. It's not like I have to clean this entire house, implying she does. That then of course Gracie walks in, clearly having cleaned, and she's like, I'm done with the toilets. I'm never going to have boys.
Hmm.
And off she goes with all her cleaning supplies. And Maxwell's like, oh, at this, I wouldn't be surprised if you sent Gracie and or sorry, Maggie and Brighton to pick up my dry cleaning. And he kind of goes away for a minute. And of course, at this point, Maggie and Brighton walk in the side door with Maxwell's dry cleaning, and Fran
Correct.
hurries them away. Um, and she's like, get upstairs, move. At this point, Cece walks in and she is sadly holding Niles' like duster and she's kind of stroking it
Hmm.
and very obviously upset that he's not there. And so like Fran tries to comfort her and he like hands her like offers she says coffee. uh Cece takes a sip. She's like, "Oh, that's gravy." And then she kind of softens and she's like, "Oh, thank you, Miss Fine. I miss him so much." Um, and she goes on to say, like, and she sits down, I believe, at this point. She's like, I know everyone thought Niles and I hated each other, but that's the only way I can have a relationship. When you really get to know me, I'm not a well woman. And Fran's like, I know, I know. And she's like standing up behind Cece, patting her. And Cece's like, and look, you're being so sweet. I should find a way to repay you. And Fran's like, oh. And Cece's like, but I won't. That's just not who I am.
Right.
Which is like, at least she has some, like,
Awareness.
yeah, of who she is. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
Okay. Take us back to the hospital.
So Fran's there and she's talking to the doctor to visit. She's there to visit Niles, and she says that she brought him some homemade fudge. can he eat that yet? And she like shows it to the doctor, and she and the doctor look at it, both say no, and so they start eating it. The doctor leaves. Fran sits down next to Niles, and she says, "Oh, Niles, look at you, so sweet. I wish there was something I could do for you." And I mean, she ultimately settles on, you know, she pulls out an eyebrow pencil and starts coloring in his eyebrows for him.
Mhm.
Um, and she's like, "Oh, Niles, everything is such a mess. I wish you were awake so I could talk to you about Mr. Sheffield. You wanted us to get together even more than Ma. Well, maybe not more than Ma. Oh, look how sweet you look. What's going on in that little head of yours?" And then we cut into what he's dreaming. Do you want to do this or should I?
You.
Okay. So we see Fran. I think she's sitting on the edge of Maxwell's desk. Come on, Mr. Sheffield. It's been 22 years. Can't you tell me that you love me already? And then like the chair turns around and it's Daniel Daniel Davis, the man who plays Niles, um, t- dressed as Mr. Sheffield. He takes his glasses off. "Miss Fine, I'm concerned about the children." To which Fran says, "But Gracie's 40." And in comes Cece. "Maxwell, I'm sorry I'm late, but my date kept me out all night." And following her in is Charles Shaughnessy, who plays Maxwell, dressed as Niles, who snarkily says, "Did he change the locks on you again?" And
Mhm.
Cece's like, "Actually, I didn't even have a date. I lied to make you jealous. Did it work?" And Niles, pretending to be Maxwell, says, "Let's find out." And they kiss. And Fran's
Mhm.
like, "Wait a minute. I thought you two hated each other." And Niles, pretending to be Maxwell, says, "Miss Fine, you're no Niles. You don't know everything that goes on in this house."
Mhm.
And that's the end. I think they kiss again. And then I think that's the end of the of Niles' imaginings, if you
Mhm.
will. And so then we're back in the hospital room, and you can take over now, or I can keep going.
You can keep going if you want. I didn't
Okay,
take as much detailed
that's
in that
fine.
part.
So Maxwell comes in and sees Fran there, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait outside." And Fran's like, "That's all right, Mr. Sheffield. You can stay. We can share Niles. He's like our love child."
Mhm.
And she sees that he's holding a little bag, and she takes it from him and saying, "It's very nice of you to bring him something, but he can't have sweets." And she's like opening it up, and Max is like, "Oh, it's just that dried fruit." And Fran basically tosses it on the bed next to Niles and is like, "Well, that he can have."
Mhm.
And so they like sit. I think they sit down like on the bed, like next to Niles. There's like a curtain, but the curtain's not pulled. And so they end up sitting down next to each other. And Maxwell says that it's so strange to see Niles lying there like this. Ever since we were children, he's always been my protector. He helped me get through Eton. I wasn't much of a scholar. He helped me get girls. And Fran's like, "Well, yeah, a guy with a butler is a major turn on." And
Mhm.
Maxwell's like, "Well, Miss Fine, when he gets well, things are going to be different. For a start, I'm going to give Niles Saturdays off." "Oh, no, wait, I'll need him on Saturdays." And Fran's
Mhm.
like, "I tell you, it really makes you think, doesn't it? And he's like, how unpredictable life can be." And he's like, "Yeah, that's right. That's why you have to live every day to the fullest because you never know what's going to be your last." And she's like, "Nope." And they're like eyeing each other. They're getting closer and closer. And then they kiss.
Mhm.
And one of them pulls the curtains separating where the bed on which they are now making out from Niles. At some point, Niles wakes up and he hears Fran say, "Oh, Mr. Sheffield." And Cece comes in and she's like, "Niles, oh, I'm so glad you're awake. How are you feeling? Is there anything I can get for you?" And he like
Mhm.
pauses a minute and you can see the wheels turning in his head. He's like, "Well, I would like another pillow." And she's like, and he like gestures towards the pulled curtain. And Cece says, "Oh, of course," pulls back the curtain and shrieks because she's
Mhm.
found Fran and Maxwell.
Yep.
Do you want to add anything?
No. No. Although like Cece's demeanor is very like it's like the nicest we've ever seen
Correct.
because she's not being sarcastic or anything as she's like talking to him like
Correct.
tonight. She seems like very happy that he's awake.
Well, of course she's
Uh,
happy he's awake because he didn't die from the heart attack she gave him.
yeah. she has her sparring partner back.
Exactly.
But yeah, that is the episode. So any kind of overarching things you want to talk about before we jump into our shticks?
Yes, if I may.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
The timing of the episode doesn't make any sense.
Mhm.
And like just from even the very first scene, it doesn't make sense that Niles would ask Fran how Maxwell stays in shape because he has known Maxwell significantly longer than Fran has. Number one.
Mhm.
Number two,
Yeah.
how does Fran get to London before Maxwell?
Yeah.
Like, either did she somehow magically get on a flight that left earlier, but so then she beat him to the airport. They didn't see each other at security, and then she got there first, and like
Mhm.
that doesn't make any sense. Also, or alternatively, she was on the same flight with him and they didn't run into each other. Also doesn't make sense. Um,
Mhm. How
also,
does she have 40,000 miles to use?
right, well, I mean, we know that back in season 3 in the Shopaholic episode, she said that she was so close to having enough mileage to get to Israel.
Oh,
So
okay.
we
Okay.
know that. How, as you put it, how would she have that? I don't know. But also, how did she get to into his room onto his
Yep.
balcony? Because
Yep.
that seems like a security breach to
With
me.
drinks. Like
See
she must have procured, glasses somewhere.
see that's so funny that you flagged that because to me that made the most sense. That clearly once she like checked into the hotel room for them, she was like, "Oh, send up a
Oh.
bottle of champagne to the room." But again, how would she have done that? Because she is not Mrs. Sheffield. Also,
Well, and it
very
doesn't seem like the attendant saw her.
uh huh right. So what did she do? Climb the side of the building?
Yeah.
but
Right?
but I
Mighty
mean,
Fran.
like I don't think she could have done that in her outfit. Um,
Nope.
but like, so obviously she has gotten into the hotel room by checking in, which means that when Maxwell then checked into the room, he would have been told, by the way, your wife is here. And he would have been like, what? What are you talking about? And he would not have like just laid down and like tried to like recover from jet lag. Um,
Mhm.
and then the last, I think the last thing I will complain about on this issue is it doesn't make sense how Fran and Maxwell got back to New York City. Like the timing doesn't make sense there either. They get a phone call that Niles has had a heart attack, and then it's as if they like had to like cross town because like Cece like didn't know anything when they got there. Cece didn't like had no other information. Also, side note, not quite sure how much information the doctor could have shared with Maxwell, Fran, and Cece since they are not family or like
Yeah.
Niles' health proxies.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Um, so yeah, just none of this made a lot of sense. Like, also, like, why would the kids have stayed with Yetta at the house instead of going to the hospital to see Niles? Like, again, just the episode does not make a lot of sense. All right, I
That's
am done. Now,
yep.
do you have anything you want to talk about before we get into our shticks?
Um, I don't think so. I think we can probably address them
Okay,
as we go.
okay. Well, I've said my piece. Thank you for
Well,
letting me
okay,
rant.
wait. I take that back. I just think it's interesting that again, the major thing in this to some extent is Niles having a heart attack. Um, but then when he wakes up, we don't actually really have much of him having like he doesn't talk to Fran or Maxwell when he wakes up. Like I don't know, it just seemed to kind of end abruptly
Yeah,
without getting into more of Niles appreciate and like they did a lot of appreciating of him, but like not with him awake.
correct,
I don't know if
correct.
that makes sense,
No,
but
no, it does, and I will. I'm going to make a note to come back to that in our future fun segment.
okay. With that, shall we jump into favorite fashion?
Yes. Did you have anything you particularly liked or disliked?
Um, Not like in terms of like particularly, but I did want to talk about like her outfit in London.
Yes. Yes.
Because for our viewers, she shows up, she has like at first I thought it was a dress, but later it becomes apparent it's like a two-piece, like
Hmm.
a top and a skirt. The top is like the Union Jack flag,
Mhm.
um, and then, like, a red skirt, correct? It's
Yep,
red,
and then
right?
a red, headband and black
Mhm.
heels and,
Yeah,
like,
so it's a
black
bit
sheer
like
tights.
yeah, and it looks good on her,
Oh, it
and
does.
it's like one of those things though, like, is it a bit too on the nose? You know? I don't know.
Um,
Um
so in rewatching this so I went to London when I was 10, and the one item that I distinctly remember picking up while in London was a purse with the Union Jack on it. Full, it was like sequins, and so I can't help but wonder if watching The Nanny influenced my purchase of the souvenir,
Mhm.
which frankly I'm not sure if I still have, but that was like I made a point of getting something with the British flag on it, and it very well
Mhm.
could come back to the fact that that's what she wore when she was in Britain.
Mm, could be. Yeah, again, she looked great in it. I just don't know, like, if it was just a bit too on the nose. Then again, I mean, there are plenty of times Americans wear, like, the American flag all over, 4th
True,
of July. It's everywhere, so
true.
but yeah,
Uh,
but she looked good in it.
I will say, just before we talk about any other fashion, I think that would have been a very uncomfortable thing to wear for
That's
her trip.
exactly that's exactly what I was gonna
Oh,
say,
I'm
is that,
sorry.
like, that is no, 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 it's funny because we were like I had just thought of that right before you started talking. I was like, "That would be a very uncomfortable, like, transatlantic
Mhm.
outfit."
Yeah.
So then that adds even more complications to the timeline because, again, she just happened to have that in her closet. If
That
she
I
didn't
believe.
wear if she didn't wear it on the plane, that
Correct.
means she would have had to get dressed
Mhm.
in addition to somehow getting into the hotel room prior
Mhm.
to Maxwell getting there.
Which makes me think that she got dressed at the Sheffield home and wore that for the, what, 6, 8-hour flight? That
Yeah,
would have just been
did
so
did
uncomfortable.
she take any luggage?
She had just that one, as far as we can tell, she had just that one bag she started packing when she was fighting with Maxwell.
Mhm. So,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Yep. Okay. Sorry. What about you? What kind of fashion do you wanna talk about?
That was the fashion I wanted to talk about. I actually liked it. I thought it was, as you put it, very on the nose. I will also mention that she had a beautiful red coat that she wore with it that matched the red skirt, and that
Mhm.
looked adorable. Um, she does also wear like this blue, teal, I think yellow suit when she visits Niles in the hospital. That's okay. I still prefer the British flag. Um, yeah. And then, I mean, as you mentioned, the bathrobes are back. Um,
Mhm.
and then I have the note, her black and white outfit when she was not cooking the home cooked meal, but I just remember being black and white and sort of like the yin and yang type, like matching of the white and the black. I thought it
Mhm.
was fine. Nothing to write home about.
Yeah. Yeah. I did wanna just make the observation that Cece actually wore a pretty bright outfit.
The blue suit,
Or
or
was it what color was it?
I
'Cause I
like a
thought it was, like, yellow
periwinkle.
or maybe it might have been, but, like, the entire outfit was a lot more color than she usually wears.
I honestly I didn't take note of what Cece was wearing except when she visited Niles at the. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, oh! It was a yellow coat. That's what it was, right? When she wasn't it a yellow coat when she was at the hospital and filling Maxwell and Fran in? She had a yellow beret on her head.
Yeah, she had that as well. Um, yeah, I didn't actually take much notes on it. I just made the observation, "Oh, she's wearing more color than usual."
There, yeah, I think that's what she was wearing the first the first scene in the hospital, and then the second time we're in the hospital, she's wearing like this periwinkle blue suit with like navy blue um accents.
Mhm. So, yeah. Any other fashion you wanted to discuss?
No, I'm good if you are.
I'm good. So we can move on to notable New Yorkers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is there a specific reference related to the title of this episode, to your knowledge?
Oh,
I
um,
don't know.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know of one, but I mean, it sounds like an expression.
Hmm. Okay. Lovely listeners, if you happen to know if there's a specific reference, let us know. We start then with the Discovery Channel.
Yes, it is a Warner Brothers owned cable channel. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. Norm Crosby's Wild Kingdom.
So those are actually two separate references. Norm Crosby uh, was the American comedian known as the Master of Malaprop. That's according
Hmm.
to our friends. Um, yeah, at Wikipedia. And then Wild Kingdom was an American television program that featured wildlife and nature. It originally aired from 1964 to 1988 before being reincarnated in 2002, and then it lasted until 2011. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. I could not find a connection between Norm Crosby and Wild Kingdom.
I guess they're just making up a new show based off of orgasms.
Maybe.
I guess. Okay. Carl Lewis.
Uh, I think I don't have Carl Lewis. I have Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, he was later.
Oh,
Carl
I missed
Lewis.
Carl Lewis. I apologize, Carl Lewis. Carl Lewis is an American former track and field athlete who won multiple Olympic medals. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Okay. And that makes sense
Yes,
because
that
he
was the
was running
joke.
from commitment. Yes. Celine Dion.
A Canadian singer known as the Queen of Power Ballads, whose music incorporates classical music, gospel, pop, R&B, and rock, who was recorded in English, French, Chinese, German, Italian, Latin, Japanese, and Spanish.
Wow,
That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
that's impressive.
That's why I included it because I was like, wow,
Yeah, a polyglot, or at least in terms of singing.
right?
Um, Snuggle.
Dryer sheets that reduce both wrinkles and static. That's according to our friends at snuggle.com.
Hmm.
And also
They're the
apparently
ones
smell good.
that have the little bear, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
So in that same scene, Maxwell says that he'll be staying at the Connaught, which is a five-star hotel that's known for its service and elegance. And it comes with its own butler and has Michelin star dining. That's according to our friends at theconnaut.co.uk.
Nice. Did you put the Union Jack
I did not,
because
but
of the
maybe I
dress?
should have. I probably should have, but we've talked about it at length, so I think
Yeah,
we're
we
good.
can move on. Yeah. So according to the subtitles, the closed captioning, um, apparently during that montage when they're going around doing various like sightseeing and date type of activities in London, in the background is Twiggy's "A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square." I
Yes.
don't know if you caught that.
So that it is a British romantic pop song that was written in 1939. Uh, the lyrics are by Eric Mashwitz, and the music was by Manning Sherwin. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. And then, like you said, in addition to Carl Lewis, we have a reference to Jerry Lewis.
An American actor, comedian, director, humanitarian singer, producer, and writer who is known as the King of Comedy. He served as the national chairman for the Muscular Dystrophy Association and hosted the Jerry Lewis Telethon for many years. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I did want to point out when we Celine Dion does appear as herself in this episode, and she's practicing the song "It's All Coming Back."
Yep.
Uh,
The full
I,
title is It's All Coming Back to Me Now, I think.
Mhm.
And it's a song that was written by Jim Steinman that was inspired by Wuthering Heights. Um,
Oh.
Yeah, I included that because I thought you'd find that interesting. It was originally recorded by Pandora's Box on the album Original Sin before it was recorded by Celine Dion on Falling Into You. It was then recorded by Meatloaf as a duet with Marion Raven. And that's according to
Interesting.
our friends at Wikipedia.
Side note, have you ever watched the music video for it?
I have not.
Okay, that's your homework.
Okay, cool.
It's just so, so dramatic.
It's funny because I've I obviously we watch the Nanny all the time to do this podcast.
Mhm.
But one of the music streaming service I use recently dropped. It's all coming back to me now onto one of my stations. I was like thumbing it up. I was like, yes! And so it keeps playing all the time now. I'm just like, this is so funny because it makes me
Well,
think of this episode.
it's fun to sing along to too, like belting it.
Uh-huh.
Even if even if you can't hit the notes like she does, it's still very fun.
It is
Uh,
very fun.
do it alone, not in public. But yeah, I your homework is to watch the music video.
I'll write myself a note so I don't forget.
Because yeah, it's so dramatic and I'd be curious on your what you think of it. So
Okay.
yeah. Think some of the things here will deal with in other shticks. I didn't catch the name of that first song she sang in French.
I did not either.
Okay. I'm assuming it's again one of her songs, because she says it is.
Yeah.
And then, uh, what was the thing with the Falklands? Did
So
you?
the Falklands, it was a 10-week military conflict between the United Kingdom and Argentina in the 1980s.
Oh,
That's
okay.
according to our friends at Wikipedia.
It just
I
seems very
assume
random for her to bring that up.
I assume that she was asking whether he was unable to perform due to a service injury.
Mm. Is it canon that he served?
Um, so I don't know if you recall this. This is such a random detail. I don't think he did, and I say that by virtue of the fact in season one, the episode "The Butler," the husband, the butler, the wife, the nanny, and her mother, I think is the title of the episode.
Mhm.
That's the episode where Niles is trying to get into the Butlers Association. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's the butler, the husband, the wife, and her mother. That's the title. Um, so one of the guys from the Butlers Association, makes it is there and like Maxwell loses himself for a moment because he's not going to participate in the charade. And he then apologizes and explains that he saw action in the Falklands and that's why he like was rattled momentarily. And the guy's like, "Oh, you saw action too? Which ship were you on?" And
Oh.
Maxwell's response was, "The other one." So I
Yeah,
don't think he did.
that is such a far back thing for, like, Fran to bring up in that moment. Oh, that's funny.
I mean,
Okay.
well, I guess I don't know if that's what she was like. I think that might be giving her too much credit. I think what she was trying to do was she was trying to give him an excuse for why he stepped away from her instead of going through with the consummation of their physical intimacy.
Mhm.
Is that the polite way to phrase that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Stonehenge.
Um, and I quote megalithic circle on Salisbury Plain, which according to folklore was created by Merlin. And that's according to our friends at nationalgeographic.com.
Did you put Godiva again? I think we've talked about it before.
We have it's chocolate,
Yep.
expensive chocolate.
Cheech and Chong.
A Canadian comedy duo who were popular during the 70s and 80s and were known for their love of marijuana.
Mhm.
And that's
We
according to
have
our friends at Wikipedia.
Yoda.
Little green alien dude from Star Wars,
Yeah,
according to Debbie.
according to Debbie. Okay.
I'm out. So,
Yeah, I'm just double checking, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm out as well.
okay. So
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of Yiddishakop.
Oh, okay.
unless I missed something. Please tell me
No,
if I did.
no,
Um,
you're right. I didn't really notice much.
yeah, so in the hotel room, um, at, or at some point, I think doesn't Fran call herself a schmuck?
Um, I didn't write it down,
Oh
but
no,
I wouldn't be
I take
surprised.
it back. She did not. She did not. I was thinking of a different episode where I think it's next week where she calls herself a schmuck. Okay, I got nothing then for you to pick up. So
Oh,
never mind.
I thought you were gonna say, I mean, Brighton makes that,
Oh, the Israeli army. Yeah, he's
Mhm.
old enough that he could fly a chopper in the Israeli army. Israel is is the only Jewish state, and it does have mandatory military service. So I tried to figure out how old someone had to be to fly a chopper, and I could not get a straight answer.
Okay. Yeah, and then I know you couldn't decipher what Fran was saying, but I think like the closed captioning said that she was singing in Yiddish. I
I
take
mean,
it that's not a very common song.
it's very possible she was singing in Yiddish, but I could not make out a word of what she said.
Okay. So then we're ready to go on to 90s nostalgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead.
Old cars.
Yep. We even get to see an old double decker
Hmm.
in England. Um, did you notice the skyline in that one scene of New York?
I did. Yes.
Yep, with the Twin Towers. So obviously, again, pre 9/11.
Yep.
I
Um,
feel like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the old phone, the fact that like someone actually called Maxwell on his hotel room phone to tell
Yeah,
him about Niall's heart attack.
yeah. Again, like I would totally see, like, first of all, like, yeah, I would imagine that nowadays he would be getting a direct call to his cell phone
Hmm.
or like frantic texts or like whatever it may be. I could also see him potentially with the whole Celine Dion thing, um, not making the trip in person. Now he still might, to schmooze and like try to convince, but like
Hmm.
it didn't seem like they really had much of an interaction anyway. It
No,
was like
she totally
a
blew him off.
yeah. Um, so it's like that could have been done like virtually.
That could have been done as a phone call. He did not have
Yeah.
to fly halfway across the globe. Yeah,
Or like a Zoom call or like, some other yeah. It just
agreed.
seemed like it wasn't as necessary to go in person. Again, some people still might because there is that added touch of, being in person, but just given what occurred and the total lack of time and actually talking,
Hmm.
I don't know if he was planning on taking Celine to random places and blew that off just to be with Fran, but it didn't seem like that because she was rehearsing.
Correct.
So I don't know what the original intent of the meeting was. Like, was it just him chasing after her and it wasn't officially set up? Like he was just hoping to like catch her? Or
That seems unlikely since he was able to like get in where she was
yeah.
rehearsing.
And then that makes me wonder, was he really just going there for like a couple of minutes between her practices?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems totally ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay. So then we can add to the kiss count this week.
Yes, we can.
Now
Um,
the difficulty being how we count them.
that was going to be my question. Do you count them as like
Okay. I'm still going to count the one on the bench
agreed?
because it was a
They
lip
were,
kiss.
and it was not in someone's fantasy. Yes.
Yes, it really happened. And obviously, when they're like making out to get into the hotel room, um,
Does that count as one kiss or multiple kisses?
I think we have to kind of do it as like an occasion, like one kiss,
I
because
think
it's
that's
hard.
what we've done before. So
Yeah, because it would be hard to like. determine each individual. I did not pay that close of
I did
attention.
not either. So,
And so similarly, at the end of the episode when they're making out, uh, in the hospital bed next to Niles,
mhm.
um, that would be another one. So we have, like, 3 distinct, um, kissable moments in this episode.
I love
So
that.
what does that what does that bring us up to then, Debbie?
I believe that brings us up to 25.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah,
Now, we have another category, which unfortunately I don't think we can add to because it was in a fantasy. But we have
correct.
the category of the Cece and Niles kiss count. Um,
Correct.
Unfortunately, that only happened in Niles.
Subconscious. Not even his
Yes,
like actual mind.
yes. Now, query for you.
Okay.
Fran doesn't quite say the thing, right? There's
Correct.
just a general conversation of Maxwell's fear of commitment, or like the fact that he's worried about what to say because if he says the wrong thing, she's never gonna let him forget it. But there is no
Mhm.
specific. So I
I
don't
don't
think
think
we necessarily we count anything for that category this week. I just wanted to check in with you.
I feel like this one's kind of on the fence. And here's the counter argument. You're right. Fran does not say to him, but you took back the thing or something like that. He is the one who says that he can't say anything wrong because God knows, Lord knows you won't let me forget it. And then her response is, well, what could you say that was wrong? And
Mhm.
like that's sort of jabbing at him like you did this wrong previously, don't do it wrong again, like and then he immediately does.
Yeah.
Um
I guess one could argue that the entire premise of this episode is connected with the thing
yes,
because it's like rekindling Paris and London.
correct. I mean,
So
I
yeah,
would be okay increasing that count. I would also be okay not increasing the count. So I will
okay,
defer to your judgment.
we'll just say no. We're not going to
Okay.
increase it. And we'll move on to future fun.
All right. Okay. So let's see. I made a note based on one of your comments about like, it's sort of weird that Niles has this heart attack and then like no one pays any attention to him.
Yeah.
Um in the next episode of The Nanny, um, there are references to his health and things like that. But Maxwell is very concerned about the fact that he and Fran seem to have escalated their relationship in the hospital bed next to him, next to Niles. Um, and he says something to Niles like he needs to talk to someone soon, otherwise he'll get an ulcer. And Niles is just like, yes, and we know your health should be, top of our top priority or something like that.
Mhm.
So it's kind of amusing that like yes, Niles had this huge thing happen, and then like it sort of feels like it's ignored. It's not ignored next week, but like it fades quickly. It fades
Yeah.
quickly.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see. I have four other things I wanted to share. Um,
Mhm.
so in the first scene, we've already talked about how Niles asks Fran, "How does Maxwell stay so thin?" Um, Cece and Fran have a similar conversation next season, where Cece asks Fran, "How do you eat the way you do and yet you stay so thin?" And Fran's response is something along the lines of that I have a very fast metabolism. Whenever I think of how old I am and that I'm unmarried, my heart starts racing.
Mm.
Um, let's see. Okay, so Cece also comments in this episode about how she's not a well woman. That is very true. Uh, I think it's the second half of season 5, after Fran and Max will take a very large step forward in their relationship, Cece ends up being institutionalized. And
Mm.
that actually covers for the fact that the actress was on maternity leave after having a baby.
Mhm.
So that worked out well. Um, Early in season 5, Fran and Maxwell are actually going to go on their first date. It includes a celebrity film screening, dinner with a celebrity, and the appearance of Maxwell having an Estelle Getty fetish.
Hmm.
And finally, the next time that Fran and Maxwell come very close to taking a very serious physical step in their relationship, they get thwarted by an allergic reaction to pumpkin tortellini, which caused a rash, which then is countered by a shot of cortisone, which leads to immense swelling, which puts
Mm.
a huge damper on their plans.
Yeah. One would imagine.
Yes, the logical solution would have been, oh no, I have this terrible ghastly rash. Let's schedule a date for another night. But no, no, 5 years and 2 dates. I'm going, even if I have to lose a toe. Is Fran's reaction.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I have for us today.
Um, okay. Well, then we'll now move on to episode ratings. As a reminder to our lovely listeners, we rate each episode from 1 to 5 lipsticks, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. We reserve the right to change our scores ratings at a later time. It's just for fun.
Correct.
So I believe this week, Debbie, you get to go first.
I know. I knew you were gonna say that. Ugh, I hate it when it's my turn. So I do really like this episode because of, Fran's done. She is ready to either break up with Maxwell and move on, or like force him to commit to her. And she
Hmm.
does what she stands up for herself, and I think that's wonderful. And I
Hmm.
think their their time in London is, romantic and heated and wonderful until it isn't.
Hmm.
Um, and I enjoy all of that. I don't really care for the fact that the timing doesn't make a lot of sense and you really have to suspend your disbelief a lot in this episode.
Hmm.
That said, this is one of those episodes that I will watch happily, repeatedly, because again, I like Fran standing up for herself. I like her demanding what she needs and wants. Um, Shame on Maxwell for, you know, ruining things. Although, you know, counterpoint, Maxwell's right. There she was trying to push him to take a very big step, and the stakes are very high.
Hmm.
You know, if it goes as we saw before when we talked about well, I'm gonna get the episode right. Why can't I find the episode? Samson, he denied her you know when she was on the Vincenzo jury. Vincenzo said that he couldn't risk like hurting his children if they'd already lost one mother. He couldn't take away the housekeeper from them too. And I mean that's how Maxwell feels. Maxwell, as Sylvia Fine says to Fran at a much later date, like we don't have a monopoly on guilt. Like he has guilt over, the dead wife and all these other things. And like, so on the one hand, he is right to play things cautiously and take things slow. But at the same time, like, come on, buddy. Like you love her, she loves you, your kids love her. Like let's move this thing forward. Um,
Hmm.
because I mean, at some point, like we've talked about this before, that their relationship at this point is not ideal.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, I'm kind of just ranting. That said, I do really like this episode, so I am gonna give it a 4.75. Which again feels disconnected from like its glaring flaws, but go Fran. How about you, Bernadette?
Okay. So to add to your commentary, I also enjoyed seeing like Cece in this episode, like being so sad over Niles and like
Mm,
admitting like everyone thinks we hate each other, but that's how I can have a relationship. I'm not a well woman.
right,
Like and like she does have some like ability to self-reflect. Like I should do something nice to like a reward or something. But that's just not who I am.
right.
So that was amusing. Um I will note kind of what you're talking about. Some like again not the episode not making sense and stuff like that. Um So this is like the part of her showing up without him knowing, already being in his room, and then like sneaking up on him when he is sleeping or resting, right?
Mhm.
That only works because this is fiction and we're rooting for them, right? If
Correct.
in real life someone did that when you are not actually in a relationship and they're insisting about like moving forward, and the way she talks of like, oh, with all this stuff I thought that we should just take time away from the kids to rekindle our romance, and he's like, what romance? In real life that would all be freaky.
You're right. You're
Real
absolutely
life,
right. That would be so creepy.
yeah, yeah. Again, it only really works because again, this is fiction and we know the genre, right? Um, I think in general, just because I like romance, and there are tropes that I enjoy reading about that I would hate to happen in real life, because there's always the guarantee, you know, um, in that genre, right, of a happily ever after. So it's all going to work out.
Mhm.
There's gonna be redemption, or there's gonna be whatever, or like he secretly does really love her. Um, so he wouldn't view this as much of a creepy thing. But in real life, you don't have those assurances.
That
So
is
yeah,
very true.
the thought of someone just following you across the ocean, somehow accessing your room and like making a move on you is creepy. But again, it works just because this is Fran and Maxwell in a fictional universe, right?
Correct. Can I
I
just
just wanted to
can I
point that
ask?
out.
No, you're absolutely right. But as you were saying that, I also wonder how, besides the fact that yes, we are rooting for them, and yes, it is fiction. I wonder how much of it is like it's Fran doing the stalking, not Maxwell.
Yeah, so it's the woman instead of the man, although that still can be very,
Problematic.
creepy. I mean, we have numerous, like, true crime, like, situations where, like, the woman's obsessed and all of that. So, again, like, as a woman, if a man did that and in the real world, and I was just like, we're not in a relationship and you're just like in my hotel room,
Hmm.
that would be creepy. Unless there's some
No, it would be creepy.
deeper backstory. It would still be creepy. I would be creeped out. But like unless we were like really on the verge of like, even then, it's like again, a lot of fiction is like, oh, you get away with it because it's fiction.
Correct.
And you're reassured that she's not, you know,
Going to do something bad to him.
exactly. So anyway, I just felt the need to point that out.
No, that is very good. Thank you.
Um, but on that note, like you, I'm just gonna go ahead, give it a 4.75.
Glad I could help. Glad I could
Yeah.
help tell you where to put that.
Yep. I appreciate it.
You're
Whenever
welcome.
you go first, I'm like, ah, yes, okay.
I can't think of what the term is, but there's actually a psychological term for it where like someone throws out a number and that like you know
Helps kind of ground you in a way.
exactly, exactly. I can't remember what the term is, but yeah, glad I could help.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
I don't think so. How about you?
I do not.
All right, well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next time when we'll wrap up season 4 before moving into episode 102, The Morning After.
If you would like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.